Uncle Mark.
Well, hello.
If you can, I'd love for you to name a Presidential Medal of Honor winner. I mean, it's such a rare and it goes to only the greatest of Americans.
Yeah, I know that Neil Armstrong got one.
Okay. Yeah.
I know that. I think Harriet Tubman got. Harriet Tubman. She didn't exist. My God, listen to me. I know that Rosa Parks got one.
Yeah. So it's really reserved for the best American.
It tends to be.
It tends to be.
Yeah.
Really hate the way we're opening this segment because it makes me so mad.
Oh, Uncle Doug, bring us down then.
I'm going to take it away.
Yeah, get rid of it.
But we're going to get to that later on, and it is truly, and I'll retouch on this, of the many outrages of the Trump administration, and for reasons that we'll discuss, that was one of the darkest, most loathsome, infuriating moments of the entire fucking nightmare.
And it probably happened just because he knew that it would infuriate people like us.
Truly. And we'll get there, but this medal was pinned around the neck of one of history's true pieces of shit.
Yeah.
Well, dear uncles, this last week saw the passing of one, as I said, of history's great pieces of shit. After a lifetime of pumping a steady stream of vicious, racist, homophobic, xenophobic, transphobic, misogynist, bigoted, science-denying, counterproductive, cruel, mean, personal, and stupid bile into the body politic, the cultural zeitgeist, and into tens of millions of homes for over 30 years, Rush Limbaugh expelled his last halitotic breath, his last phlegm-flaked breath from his corpulent putrescence, shuffled off his mortal boil, kicked the 10-piece crispy bucket, and in every applicable way went the way of the dodo. I was not a fan. With that, I may be tipping my hand a bit as to where we'll end up in today's discussion, but with the passing of such a singular bag of dicks such as Limbaugh, I feel less the need to look for the good he may have done in his lifetime, spoiler alert, there wasn't any, but to deliver what John Oliver lovingly coined in his podcast The Bugle, a fuck eulogy.
Yes, indeed.
Right. For in the words of Mark Antony in Julius Caesar, Act 3, Scene 2...
friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. The evil that men do lives after them. The good is oft interred with their bones.
Oh, excellent work.
Yay. Thank you, Dan. Oh, how I wish that were true. But unfortunately, in our culture, we have a tendency to whitewash our public figures at the moment of their passing and tiptoe away from their sins. But we'll get to that in due time. Now, I know that this show is primarily religious criticism, with the occasional, mostly unintentional funny bit tossed in. So the ugly life and far too delayed passing of a figure like Rush Limbaugh does not fit neatly into our format. Although an unfortunately influential public figure, he was not a religious one. His worldview came from an inherent, deep-seated hate and cruelty than any kind of religiously fueled evil. And although he made common cause with many religious figures when his hate dovetailed with theirs, he was not a religious person. He never really proclaimed any religious beliefs or tenets, didn't use his daily 3 hours of hate radio to preach the Bible, and he certainly did not live a pious life.
No.
However, there may be no more consequential figure on the American right, the religious right, than this man. And you can draw a straight line from the career of Rush Limbaugh to the political rise of Donald Trump, the death of 500,000 fellow Americans to COVID because of science denialism, and the ongoing catastrophe in Texas due to incompetent governments, and for the underlying problem of climate change due to climate change denialism. Pretty much every vile and vicious thing that the right has done over the past several decades at least has Limbaugh's fingerprints on it, if not birthed in the swollen syphilitic brain of Limbaugh himself. And not for nothing, but personally, there may be no person outside of my family, with the possible exception of Joseph Smith, Mark, you and I talked about this the other day, that has done more to damage and ultimately destroy my family than Rush Limbaugh.
Yep.
And because we were nothing special, he has surely inflicted that damage on countless other families.
Yeah.
Rush ranks high on the list of destructive demagogues who, with nothing more than words, and motivated by some unknown damage or derangement, have set the American project back decades. I can only think of Father Coughlin or Joseph McCarthy and Grimace that merit mentioning in the same sentence.
I thought you almost said Gritty, and I was going to fucking throw down with you.
I found you guys are very sensitive about Gritty, so I'm going to lay that one off a bit.
Gritty is one of us. Gritty is on the side of the angels. Grimace, not so much.
Yeah. Well, nobody knows about Grimace. Grimace is the one who runs all the pedophile rings. That's the problem.
I would love for QAnon to be true to find that out. But
tell your QAnon friends for that for us, guys. Let's see if it ends up in the bloodstream out there.
Yeah,
exactly.
Let's start that one.
So, for a look back at Rush's spiritual predecessor, listen to Uncle Mark's segment on Father Coughlin back in episode 37, because on top of everything else he was, Limbaugh was not even fucking original. So today, I'd like to talk just a bit about the life and career of Limbaugh, how he became what he became, and what that has done to our country, and what his legacy will probably be. And at the end, I want to talk about the notion of whether it's kosher to speak ill of the dead at all. Although, by now, I think I've probably tipped my hand about that.
Yeah.
Well, Dan and I will probably disagree, but proceed.
We'll see where we all land.
I'll allow
Right.
it. Continue.
Limbaugh was born in Missouri in 1951, and by all accounts, including his mother's, he was unremarkable. He flunked out of college to pursue his passion, which was broadcast radio. From an early age, he dreamed of being a disc jockey, and because his father, a World War II veteran, was apparently very stoic and distant, Rush found kinship with the snarky and childish disc jockeys that predated the kind of morning zoo craze. For the love of fucking God, fathers, either hug your fucking sons from time to time or get your goddamn tubes tied.
Yeah.
Right?
Jesus Christ.
Dads, go to fucking therapy. Seriously.
Yeah.
My God. Limbaugh bounced around the dial and the country, getting turfed out of one radio job after another because, you see, he was an asshole. His demeanor and his views not only rubbed listeners and management wrong, but often made stations run afoul of the fairness doctrine. This radio regulation held that radio stations had to provide free airtime for the rebuttal of controversial views. And if we
need to bring that back.
Truly. And if we know anything about radio stations, they don't like to give away their airtime for free. But then Ronald Reagan, on his own crusade to do to the American government what Rush was trying to do to the American culture, repealed the Fairness Doctrine in 1987, and Rush was the first person to rush into that void. Although his show would change stations over the years, by 1990, what we all know and hate as the Rush Limbaugh Show was fully formed. Just in time for the election of Bill Clinton, having what he considered to be the perfect foil in Clinton, his wife, and famously his daughter, whom he compared to a dog on more than one occasion, Rush's show catapulted to the top of the charts.
His preteen daughter at the time.
His preteen daughter, a young girl with braces who, was, just trying to survive in that environment.
Right.
He is credited with aiding Newt Gingrich to take in the takeback of the House of Representatives in 1994 after 40 years of Democratic control. So grateful were the House Republicans, they made Limbaugh an honorary member of their caucus. The Republican Revolution, quote unquote, and subsequent impeachment of Clinton cemented Limbaugh as a kingmaker on the right and required listening for anyone who called themselves a Republican. Eventually, copycat competitors would eat into his market share, but Limbaugh's influence would never really wane in Republican politics until his death only days ago. Sometime in those early years, a lonely and angry Mormon housewife in Salt Lake City happened upon his show, and once the dial was set to his daily rants, it would never move. Our mother was an early and enthusiastic fan, an OG, you might say. If Limbaugh had ever been released on vinyl, our mother would have had all the albums, the singles, and the B-sides. And what was it that she and millions of our fellow countrymen were listening to for 3 hours every single day of the week? Well, Rush's style was bombastic, know-it-all bully. He was blustery, loud, and pompous, and his audience lapped it up. Here, for example, is how he began his show every day. This is the Rush Limbaugh.
Friends, Romans.
Exactly.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I thought I was me again.
You came in late. Wait.
This is Rush Limbaugh, the most dangerous man in America, with the largest hypothalamus in North America, serving humanity simply by opening my mouth, destined for my own wing in the Museum of American Broadcasting, executing everything I do flawlessly with zero mistakes, doing this show with half my brain tied behind my back just to make it fair, because I have talent on loan from God.
Did he actually say that?
Yep.
Every fucking day. Every time he opened his show. Yeah. The pomposity. Okay, but that's not even the worst of it. Like, if that was all it was, his just boorish pomposity, then nobody, least of all me,
Who
would give a
cares?
shout about that. Yeah, give a shit about this gas bag. There are two real issues with Limbaugh that should be mentioned here: what he said and what he represented. But before we go down that road, it bears mentioning that Limbaugh always believed that he was slaying it, that he was the funniest man alive. And as we'll discuss in a minute, I've imbibed a disproportionate amount of this bile. And one thing I can tell you is that he was not funny. Not just because humor at some level needs to be self-deprecating, and it's best when it's punching down, two things that Limbaugh never did,
Right.
but also because there is some craft to being funny.
Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Punching
it's best
up.
when it's punching up. Right.
Pardon me. Exactly right. When you're punching up. Exactly.
Yeah. And he never punched up.
Punching down, he was really good at.
I completely true. Yeah, thank you. For the purpose of this podcast, I endeavor, sometimes successfully, sometimes even intentionally, to be funny. Both of you are funny. We are in league with some very funny people in the podcast universe, and baby, Limbaugh was not funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
so true.
He was just fucking mean.
mean, always
Yeah.
mean. So let's talk for a second about what Limbaugh has spent the last 30 years spewing. He was astoundingly racist, once
Yeah.
telling a black caller to, quote, "take that bone out of your nose and call me back."
Yeah.
And that's, again, I'm only sampling. He was shockingly homo and transphobic, even running a recurring segment during the 90s where he read the names of AIDS victims and made fun of them on air.
Yeah, like after they've died.
Yeah, dead.
Right. And just ordinary people, not public figures, just ordinary people.
Ordinary people. Right.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind, anybody who wants to call us out for speaking ill of the dead.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's turnabout is fair play at some level.
Exactly.
It's got to be.
He was unbelievably anti-immigrant, often referring to wetbacks, towel heads, other epithets that I cannot repeat on here, or I won't. He was absolutely anti-science, claiming that evolution, climate change, and green energy were hoaxes. And, of course, he was famously, disgustingly anti-feminism.
Yeah, and just to remind everybody, this is a man, and not that not that everybody needs to go to college or everything, but this is a man with essentially no education.
Yeah, exactly.
He spoke about these things as if he was an expert. He knew nothing.
He knew nothing, and not for nothing. He was, and we can talk about this as he approached the end of his life. He didn't have an evolution. He didn't have a personal journey. No. What he said, 30 years ago was what he was saying 4 days ago, right? Like,
Yeah.
like many of us, we have a journey. We grow, we learn, we improve. Rush Limbaugh was kind of out of Minerva. He was what he was from the beginning.
Go with what works, man.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The guy got wealthy off of not improving.
Like I didn't write a segment about his wealth here, but his wealth is shocking and horrifying.
Yeah.
Horrifying.
Yeah.
He became incredibly wealthy. Anyway, he not only coined the term feminazi, but got into one of the most repulsive flame wars of the entire pre-Trump era. In 2012, a woman's rights activist named Sandra Fluke was advocating for contraception to be covered by insurance in the same way that, say, Viagra was.
Right.
That's called foreshadowing. Limbaugh was enraged by this uppity C word daring to advocate for the health of her gender. And so he said the following on air, broadcast to 30 plus million homes. He said the following, quote, "What does it say about the college co-ed's Susan Fluke?" He mispronounced her name, who goes before a congressional committee and essentially says that she must be paid to have sex. What does that make her? It makes her a slut, right? It makes her a prostitute. She wants to be paid to have sex. She's having so much sex she can't afford the contraception. She wants you and me, the taxpayers, to pay her to have sex. He followed up with this. So, Miss Fluke and the rest of you feminazis, here's the deal.
Jesus.
If we are going to pay for your contraceptives and thus pay for you to have sex, we want something for it, and I'll tell you what it is. We want you to post the videos online so we can watch.
Fuck. Such a scumbag.
How did the religious right embrace this man?
Because the religious
shocking.
right is loaded with misogyny. Like, this is not...
Well,
Exactly.
yeah, but also he's advocating for pornography.
For live pornography. There is so much wrong with that.
I don't even know where to begin.
Yeah, but he didn't. He paid a cost in the sense that for a period of time, he did lose some sponsors, and he did lose some local affiliates dropped his show for a time. But before long, he was back to his former malignancy, and not for nothing, but the religious right couldn't have cared less.
Right.
Because they're so anti-contraception.
Yeah.
Right?
Which is also bizarre. Like that's
I know.
That's an anti-abortion pill right there.
And you might be
for it.
going to discuss this, Doug, but you know, he's such an asshole and he knows so little about anything that he thinks that birth control pills are like Viagra.
Exactly.
And that you have to take, like he has to take Viagra. He had to take Viagra every time he wanted to have sex. So that's how birth control works. That's how
exactly
the pill
right.
works. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what he thought, is that a woman needs to take a birth control pill every time she wants to have sex. And again, the religious right didn't say a fucking word about this.
Right.
It's so
repugnant.
So repugnant. Now,
and bizarre. Just completely incoherent.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. I'm sampling from a list that is basically fucking endless.
Yeah, it's
Every
3 hours
day.
a day for 30 years.
Every day, Limbaugh said things that would offend any kind of enlightened sensibility, right? Believe me, I know. Here's the thing. I am a bit of an expert on Rush Limbaugh, unfortunately. Not only was he kind of a constant presence in the last few years before I moved out of my parents' house, because our mother had him on all 3 hours every day.
Yeah, the radio turned all the way up.
Every fucking day.
Yeah.
But I kind of got into him in the 2000s. And to be clear, I listened to him ironically and anthropologically. but I listened to him a lot, nearly every day.
I can't believe you did that.
I did for years and years. I just listened. I would always listen to Rush Limbaugh, and I never, ever did it because I thought he had a good point, but because it was kind of fascinating and shocking. And there must have been a part of me that was like, this guy basically ruined my family. I want to hear it.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, whatever gravitational pull he might have, it never affected me. And I'm not bragging. It was always self-evidently stupid, boorish, mean-spirited, and awful.
Yeah.
Right? But I listened to him almost every day. And I can tell you a couple things about his show. One, he was not at all, ever, even a little bit, funny. And secondly, every hour of every day that he was on broadcast, he said something terrible, awful, vile, cruel, and shocking. Every hour of every day. And this was pumped into tens of millions of houses for 3 hours a day for decades. Right?
Yeah.
And businesses. I would go to, I'd go someplace to pick up an order, for something, and they would have it just be playing on the radio in a business.
Exactly. There's one thing I did learn about his style, and this is, a point of personal privilege. I did kind of figure out that he had a certain way of being between, a catheter and boner pill commercials. What he would do is he would talk about an issue very superficially and from a very specific point of view to kind of get your blood boiling. And then before you could kind of drill down or really think about it, he would pivot to the next one.
The old switcheroo. Right.
Yeah. So he'd, feminazis doing this, women, this, that, pivot. The climate hoax, this and that. They're trying to take away, Pivot. Mexicans are coming to take your jobs. Pivot. Boner pill commercial.
Yeah.
3 hours a day, every day for decades. So, and this is not even to mention his lifestyle. He was thrice divorced, 4 times married. In 2006, he had a pretty famous incident where on the way back from the Dominican Republic, he had a entire bottle of Viagra pills confiscated by customs and a prescription that wasn't even his.
Yeah.
Wow.
He was clearly a sexual tourist in the Dominican Republic.
Yeah.
And he was, this became a thing. And he said on his show, quote, "I had a great time in the Dominican Republic. I wish I could tell you about it." So we know what he was doing. And God only, what the depravity that he probably was up to is not known.
Yeah.
In 2001, he began to go deaf ironically, but it didn't stop him. By the time he died last week, he was 100% deaf.
Oh, really?
Yeah, 100% deaf, which, Beethoven, he was not. So finally, we're getting there, but what he represented is the other vile thing about Rush Limbaugh. What he said was so vile and so terrible, and it was delivered every day to millions of households, but what he represented was what happened in America, and it may be Rush Limbaugh's fault, and it certainly gave space for Donald Trump, is what happened to just living a good life and being a good person for its own reward, for its own sake, right?
Oh, you mean a suckers game?
Right, exactly.
You're talking about the suckers game?
When did being charitable and being kind become cuckold behavior?
Yeah.
Right, and that is really what Rush Limbaugh was the model for millions and millions of men in this country, including one of our brothers.
Yeah.
To be evil and mean and cruel and shitty.
Who was a kind person and just became deranged.
And we Mark, you and I can kind of mark this. He began listening to Rush Limbaugh when he was a good, kind person, and by within years, he became a version of Rush Limbaugh.
He became somebody that I am worried is a threat to himself, his own family, and others. Yeah,
that's absolutely true. And just he gave space for so many men particularly, but women of course, but to be assholes, and to be righteous about being assholes.
Yeah.
And then, of course...
I mean, you talk about the men, but, I mean, the Karen phenomenon is real, too.
100%.
That's him also.
Yeah,
100%.
And, our mother had an enormous amount of misogyny, and she hated women.
She did.
So he spoke right to her soul.
That's absolutely right. And the thing is, you can't... This stuff was pumped in hour after hour, day after day, year after year for decades into so many homes. The damage this man has done. And although he never was really, I never heard him talk about Trump. I certainly never heard him talk about Jesus. Let's put that down. I never heard Trump talk about Limbaugh talk about the Bible, but I never heard him talk about Trump. But what he did was tend the garden and till the soil that the weed of Trump would eventually grow in the Republican Party.
He laid the pipe for white male American assholery to be the ascendant political sign of the zodiac. Yes, absolutely.
He's the grandpapa of Proud Boys.
Right, exactly. And the people who've come after the Hannitys and the Becks and the Carlsons and the Bartiromos, they're all copycats. They're all echoes of what Limbaugh did. And to the point you made at the beginning, Dan, for a man who's done so much damage personally to me, and I'm a white man, I'm a straight white man, right? Like I was never his target I was never the person he was actually targeting.
Right.
To see that when Trump announced at the last State of the Union that he was getting the Medal of Honor and he was there, and he faked, "Oh, me? Oh, my God," and started crying when it had been announced for days that he was getting the Medal of Honor.
Yeah.
Right.
Not the Medal of Honor, the Medal of Freedom, excuse me. And Melania pinned it around his stupid neck at that moment. It was so disgusting and repulsive and hurtful. A man who had dedicated his entire life's endeavor to stomping on the lesser, got that medal pinned around his neck in the fucking well of the Capitol, was one of the most repulsive things of the entire Trump administration. And that brings us...
That's
it was one of the things of the Trump administration.
August company right there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In a sea of awful and unworthy things that happened during the Trump presidency.
That's right.
That was an interesting highlight.
And the soiling of anything good about kind of the American,
exactly.
The just our instruments of honor just ruin everything.
Yeah, and I don't, empirically I can't say because we have a long list of things that Trump did bad. But for me personally, to see that pinned around his neck and for Limbaugh to pretend like, oh, I didn't know, it's that I won the, almost cry like a Miss America, was extremely painful. Yeah. So that brings us to the end of this, and to the discussion I want to have with you guys is this notion of whether or not we should speak ill of the dead. I've tipped my cards because I don't. When else are we supposed to speak truth about a person?
Yeah.
Right.
Part of the reason we are in so much trouble with people like him and Trump and Falwells and that whole ilk, that whole garbage generation of shitty white American men is because we refuse to speak about them honestly.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't know why death is some kind of power washer that removes your sins the moment your heart stops beating.
Yeah.
Well, I will say this. I'm friends with the kids of former Senator Bob Bennett, here, senator from Utah, who, when he died, had a whole bunch of vitriol spewed at him in public forums, and they had to sort of deal with that while they were mourning the loss of their father, and that sucks.
But was that vitriol true?
No,
that's the thing,
and that's part of the distinction that needs to be made. Like, he was actually a decent guy, that pissed a few people off because they were listening to Limbaugh is what the problem
was.
Right. He was a reliably right-wing senator.
Right.
But the people that attacked him, he was not nearly enough of that for them.
Right, exactly. He was dethroned by the Tea Party.
And Mike Lee.
It was sort of so they when they see someone die, they're very sensitive about, please don't, why they don't like hearing anyone speak ill of someone who's just died. I say, it's unlikely that any of Limbaugh's surviving family are going to be listening to the How To Heretic. So I have no problem on that front.
Well,
I'm going to go ahead and guess that most of Limbaugh's family are glad to be rid of him too. So that's just a guess.
Here's the thing is I get that. And I think speaking ill of the dead in the sense that you're speaking untruths is a very bad thing.
Yes.
But be warned, everyone, live a life where if you when you die, that there isn't that
if the truth that's spoken about you is that you are evil and that's the truth, you done fucked up.
Yeah,
so that's on you.
I totally agree. It's like, look, I am an advocate for people not living in fear. I think that is a bad thing. I don't think people should live in fear, but mayhaps we all ought to have a little fear about how the wake we leave and what people will say about us when we're gone, because we can do fuck all about it. Right. And clearly he didn't give a fuck. Right. I mean, the last person who cared what we think about Rush Limbaugh was Rush Limbaugh.
Yeah.
Right. And he's not, look, in our patron only segment today, we talked about Mitt Romney and his politics and his morality and stuff. And let's just say that none of us are really fans, but there is kind of a spectrum of disagreement that normal people have. Right. And so, when Mitt Romney dies, we're not probably going to have a segment talking about him in the same way.
No.
Right. And Rush Limbaugh is so far outside that spectrum. It is evil. It was vicious. It was fucking destructive. And he did it for money.
Yeah.
He didn't give a fuck. He probably really didn't give a fuck. He just had terrible opinions, and somehow he ended up making $85 million a year off of them.
Yep.
And turning our country more racist and more homophobic, more sexist in the process.
Giving sanction to the worst impulses of shitty people.
And the copycats who have followed on after him are people the likes of Sean Hannity and Tucker Carlson. Like, they're worse.
Yeah.
They're worse. And
So there you go. I think we can safely say I'm glad he's dead. Piss off.
I'm glad he's
pleasant
dead.
Fuck eulogy to him.
I'm glad he's dead, and I wish he had died sooner. And I don't apologize for that.
One of the best things that evil people can do is die.
Yeah, that's right.
So there's a quote from Voltaire that I think is apt, and it is, "To the living we owe respect, but to the dead we owe only the truth."
Okay.
So live a life where the truth that's told after your death is a positive one, or shut the fuck up.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what? And when I die, I fully expect people to speak honestly about me. I wouldn't want anything else.
I cannot wait for that. Sorry.
Yeah, someday we'll get that chance, Doug.
But yeah, exactly. Like, speak honestly of me, and hopefully that the truth of my life is net positive. And if it's not, then you or anyone else cannot fucking bitch about it. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm so fucking...
All right, so we're going to go breathe now. Thank you all, and let's move along.
Let's move on.